On February 28, 2026, 2.5 million people did something unprecedented. They canceled their AI subscriptions, all of them, in 48 hours. The hashtag QuitGPT was trending #1 in 14 countries. App Store uninstall rates for ChatGPT spiked 295%. OpenAI, the company worth $730 billion, the company that had defined the AI revolution, watched as its users walked out the door, not because the product broke, not because a competitor built something better, but because of a single phone call and what the CEO said when he picked up. Now, why should you care about a tech company losing some subscribers? Because this wasn't a boycott over a price hike or a bad feature update. This was about something that affects every single person who uses AI. The most popular artificial intelligence tool on the planet, the one that 40 million people trusted with their writing, their code, their private conversations, had just signed a deal with the Pentagon, the United States Department of Defense, and in doing so, it crossed a line that 2.5 million people decided they couldn't forgive. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. There was another company, another CEO who received the exact same phone call from the exact same Pentagon official, the exact same offer, the exact same dollar amount, and he said no. 4 words. That's all it took. His name is Dario Amodei. He runs Anthropic, and his refusal triggered the largest consumer revolt in the history of artificial intelligence. To understand how we got here, you need to know the two men at the center of this story. Sam Altman and Dario Amodei didn't just know each other, they worked together. For years, Amodei was the vice president of research at OpenAI, one of the most senior people in the entire organization. He helped build the foundational models that would eventually become GPT. He was there from the early days, when OpenAI was still a non-profit, still telling the world it existed to ensure AI benefits all of humanity. But something changed. Behind closed doors, the arguments were getting louder. Amodei and a growing faction inside OpenAI believed the company was moving too fast, cutting corners on safety testing, prioritizing commercial launches over responsible deployment. And when Microsoft's $13 billion investment landed in 2023, the tension became unbearable. So in 2021, Amodei did something drastic. He left, and he didn't leave quietly. He took 7 of OpenAI's top researchers with him, 7 people who had helped build the most powerful AI systems in the world. They started a new company. They called it Anthropic, and from day one, the mission was different. AI safety wasn't a side project. It wasn't a checkbox. It was the entire reason the company existed. Meanwhile, Sam Altman doubled down. He pushed OpenAI into hypergrowth. ChatGPT launched in November 2022 and became the fastest growing consumer app in history. By 2025, it had over 40 million paying subscribers. Revenue hit $3.6 billion a year. The nonprofit research lab had become the most valuable startup on Earth, valued at $730 billion, and Altman was the face of the AI revolution. But here's the thing about building the most powerful technology in human history. Eventually, the government comes knocking, and in February 2026, it wasn't some mid-level bureaucrat. It was Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. He reached out to both companies on the same day with the same request: deploy your AI for military applications, autonomous systems, intelligence analysis, battlefield coordination. The Department of Defense wanted Claude and ChatGPT integrated into their operations. The pitch was straightforward. America's adversaries were investing billions in military AI. China's defense AI spending had tripled since 2023. Russia was deploying autonomous drone swarms in Ukraine. North Korea was using AI for cyber warfare. The Pentagon said the United States was falling behind, and they needed the best AI in the world to close the gap. 2 CEOs, same phone call, same day, same offer. 2 very different answers. Dario Amodei's response came within hours, and it was just 4 words, quote, "I cannot in good conscience," unquote. That was it. No negotiation, no counteroffer, no let me run this by the board. He didn't ask how much the contract was worth. He didn't ask what Claude would be used for. He just said no. Sam Altman's response also came within hours, but his answer was the opposite. He signed. OpenAI entered into a multi-year partnership with the Department of Defense. The deal was reportedly worth north of $3 billion, and just like that, the company that once wrote in its charter that it would develop AI for the benefit of all humanity was now developing AI for the Pentagon. The news broke on February 27th. By February 28th, the internet was on fire. The hashtag QuitGPT appeared on Twitter at 9:17 a.m. Pacific time. By 3 p.m., it was trending #1 in the United States. By midnight, it was trending in 14 countries. Tech workers in San Francisco organized flash protests outside OpenAI's headquarters on Mission Street. Hundreds of people showed up, signs reading, "We trusted you and AI is not a weapon" lined the sidewalks. And then the cancellations started. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. millions. Within 48 hours, 2.5 million users had canceled their ChatGPT Plus subscriptions. That's roughly 7% of their entire paid user base. Gone. In a single weekend. The uninstall rate on the Apple App Store spiked 295%. On Android it was even worse, 310%. But the chaos wasn't just on the streets. Inside OpenAI, the reaction was nuclear. On March 1st, an internal email began circulating. By March 2nd, it had become a formal open letter to the board of directors. Over 200 employees put their names on it. The letter called the Pentagon deal, quote, a fundamental betrayal of OpenAI's founding mission and a reckless abandonment of the principles that brought us here, unquote. Among the signers were senior researchers, team leads, people who had been at OpenAI since the Elon Musk days. And then came the resignation that shook the entire industry. Caitlin Kalinowski, OpenAI's head of robotics, quit. Not quietly. She posted a public statement. She said she could not, in good conscience, lead a robotics division whose technology might be deployed in autonomous weapons systems. She said the Pentagon deal crossed a line she couldn't uncross. When one of your top executives walks out and tells the world exactly why, that's not just a personnel issue, that's a credibility crisis. And while OpenAI was hemorrhaging users and talent, something remarkable was happening at Anthropic. Dario Amodei's refusal, those 4 simple words, had turned him into an overnight folk hero. Claude, Anthropic's AI assistant, shot to #1 on the Apple App Store. Downloads surged 400% in a single week. Former ChatGPT users were migrating in droves. People weren't just switching products, they were switching allegiances. The narrative had flipped. OpenAI was the villain. Anthropic was the conscience of Silicon Valley. The financial damage hit fast, and it hit hard. Those 2.5 million canceled subscriptions translated to roughly $360 million in lost annual recurring revenue. At $20 a month per subscriber, the math was brutal. And it wasn't just consumer subscriptions. Enterprise clients started pulling out too. 2 Fortune 500 companies publicly announced they were switching from ChatGPT to Claude, citing, quote, alignment with responsible AI practices, unquote. Developer forums that had been ChatGPT first for 3 years were now recommending Anthropic. The ecosystem was shifting in real time. OpenAI's $730 billion valuation, which had seemed untouchable just weeks earlier, suddenly looked fragile. Investors started asking uncomfortable questions. If 7% of your users will leave over a single decision, how defensible is this business? What happens when the next controversy hits? The stock price in the secondary market dropped 19% in 10 days, but the government wasn't done, and this is where the story gets genuinely alarming. The Pentagon, furious at Anthropic's refusal, took an extraordinary step. They formally designated Anthropic as a, quote, supply chain risk, unquote. What does that mean in practice? It means the Department of Defense officially recommended that all government agencies and defense contractors avoid using Claude. They tried to blacklist a private company for exercising its right to decline a government contract. Now think about that for a second. A company says no thank you to a military deal, and the government retaliates by trying to destroy its government business. Constitutional lawyers immediately called it chilling. First Amendment scholars said it raised serious questions about compelled commercial speech. Silicon Valley investors started having panicked conversations about a new reality. What happens when saying no to the government has consequences? The ripple effects went global within days. The European Union fast-tracked new regulations on AI military use. Japan announced a full review of all AI defense contracts. 3 major American tech companies quietly withdrew from pending Pentagon AI bids, citing reputational concerns. Nobody wanted to be the next OpenAI. Back at the company, the bleeding wouldn't stop. In the 4 weeks after the Pentagon announcement, 87 employees resigned. Not fired, not laid off, they quit. And these weren't junior engineers or interns. These were senior researchers, product managers, and team leads, people who had helped build GPT-4 and GPT-4. The brain drain was real, it was accelerating, and every departure made the next one easier. This story isn't really about a Pentagon contract, not when you zoom out. It's about a question that every technology company will eventually have to answer. What are you willing to build, and for whom, and what happens when your users disagree with your answer? Sam Altman bet that the money, the government backing, and the national security argument would be enough. $3 billion is a lot of money. The patriotism angle writes itself. He calculated that the backlash would blow over, that users would complain on Twitter for a week and then go right back to ChatGPT because the product was too good to leave. He was wrong, not because the arguments were bad, but because he underestimated something fundamental. In the AI age, your users aren't just customers, they're your community. They're the people who train your models through their interactions, who build on your API, who evangelize your product, lose their trust, and your $730 billion valuation is just a number on a spreadsheet. Dario Amodei bet that saying no would cost him, and it did. That supply chain risk designation hurt. Government contracts dried up overnight, but he gained something that $3 billion can't buy. He gained trust, and in February 2026, trust turned out to be the most valuable currency in artificial intelligence. 2 CEOs, same phone call, same day. One said yes, one said no, and 2.5 million people voted with their wallets. This is just one chapter in the AI revolution, and honestly, it's far from over. The next story might be even crazier than this one. If stories like this keep you up at night, hit subscribe, we've got more.